Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are turning the clock back to a very specific moment in television history.
Oh, yeah, a really pivotal moment.
Right. We are looking at the years 2003 and 2004. It was, it was the end of the must-see TV era on NBC.
The absolute end of an empire.
Exactly. I mean, Friends was wrapping up, Sex and the City was finishing his run on HBO, and standing there like a grand opera singer preparing for one final earth-shattering aurora was Frasier.
It's so true.
We are unpacking the 11th and final season of one of the most acclaimed sitcoms ever made, and for those of you listening who are fans, you know how huge this was.
It really was. When you look at the television landscape today, it's just so fractured. But back then, Frasier wasn't just a show, it was an institution.
Right.
It won 37 Emmys at that point. 37. The writers and the cast had the monumental task of landing a plane that had been flying high for 11 years.
And they didn't just want to land it.
No, they wanted to stick the landing in a way that felt true to these incredibly complex and, deeply neurotic characters.
So true. And just to set the stage for you listening, this season aired from September 23rd, 2003 to May 13th, 2004.
Oh, 4 episodes.
24 episodes closing out an 11-year run. And right from the jump, before a single line of dialogue is spoken in the premiere, there is this visual cue that tells you this is it.
Oh, you're talking about the title card.
I am totally talking about the title card.
Yeah.
For 10 seasons, we had those neon jazzy colors for the Frasier text over the Seattle skyline. But for season 11, they switched it.
To metallic gold.
To metallic gold.
Which is such a brilliant, subtle flex, honestly. It's the golden season.
Yeah.
It signals to the audience immediately that this is a victory lap.
Yeah.
It's almost a little bit pretentious, which is perfect for Frasier Crane.
Perfectly on brand.
Exactly. It says, we are royalty, we are bowing out, and we're going to do it with style.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to explore exactly how they executed that ball. We're going to look at the specific narrative arcs for the Crane family. Frasier's frantic search for the one Niles, and Daphne's transition into parenthood, and Martin's late-in-life renaissance.
The whole ensemble.
The whole ensemble. We need to break down the mixture of highbrow farce and genuine emotional closure. And of course, we have to talk about the guest stars, because this season was basically a revolving door of Hollywood royalty.
It really was. But the core question we need to keep in mind throughout this deep dive is about growth versus stagnation.
Right.
The central conflict of the entire series has always been, can Frasier Crane, a man who gives advice for a living, actually take his own advice?
The ultimate irony.
Exactly. Can he move forward, or is he destined to be alone in his impeccably decorated apartment forever? Season 11 is the answer to that question.
Well, let's start with the man himself. Segment 1, the Crane voice. Specifically, Frasier's romantic roller coaster. Because, man, does he go through the ringer this season.
Oh, it's pure desperation. That's the vibe. The season opens with a man, a plan, and a gal, Julia. And we find Frasier in a relationship with Julia Wilcox, played by Felicity Huffman.
Now, I have to be honest with you. I have always struggled with this arc.
Really?
Yeah, Julia is, she's awful. She's abrasive. She's rude to Roz's. She treats the family with this barely veiled contempt. And yet Frasier is bending over backwards to make it work. He's committing to commitment, as our source material perfectly puts it.
That's the key right there. He isn't in love with Julia. He's in love with the idea of not being alone. He sees Niles and Daphne happy. He sees Martin moving on. And he is completely terrified of being the last one standing, so he forces it. He ignores all the red flags.
Until the hand towel.
Until the hand towels.
This is one of those moments that really divides people who watch the show. Julia mocks his hand towels. She makes a snide comment about his aesthetic choices, and that is the moment Frasier snaps. He breaks up with her right there. On the surface, it looks incredibly shallow. You can tolerate her being rude to your friends, but you can't tolerate her insulting your linen.
See, I actually disagree that it's shallow.
Tell me why.
I think it's fundamental to who he is. You have to look at it through the lens of Frasier's neuroses. His apartment, his things, his style, that is his sanctuary.
Right, his safe space.
Exactly. That is the armor he wears against the world. When Julia mocks the towels, she isn't just mocking a piece of fabric. She is rejecting the Frasier lifestyle. She is rejecting the very core of who he thinks he is.
So it's a territorial defense?
Precisely. Frasier can handle a difference of opinion on politics. He can handle an intellectual fight. but he cannot handle a lack of appreciation for his taste.
Yo, where?
That is the one thing he cannot compromise on. It proves that they are fundamentally incompatible, and frankly, it's a massive relief when he kicks her out. That is it. It's a complete reclamation of his space.
And it sets a great boundary. But that breakup clears the deck for the real romantic arc of the season. And this is where the writers pull a bit of a bait and switch on us. Enter Charlotte.
Played by the incomparable Laura Linney.
Yes. Frasier is so desperate at this point that he pays $10,000 to a matchmaking service.
10 grand.
10 grand. Just hand over the check.
Which again speaks to that sheer panic we mentioned earlier. He is trying to literally buy a solution to his loneliness.
And the irony is the service is a sham. Charlotte is the matchmaker, but she has no clients. She's scamming him.
It's a classic meet cute, but built on total deception. He's the client, she's the con artist, technically.
Yeah.
But what makes this arc work, unlike the Julia arc, is the chemistry.
It's undeniable.
Laura Linney brings this chaotic, slightly messy energy that Frasier actually needs. She isn't a polished socialite. She's struggling. She's eating his biscuits. She's real.
But there's a hurdle, a very handsome, very rugged hurdle named Frank.
Played by Aaron Eckhart.
Right. Frank is Charlotte's boyfriend. He's a nice guy, but he is totally wrong for her. He's simple. He's outdoorsy. He doesn't really get her.
No, not at all.
And Frasier ends up in this excruciating position of being the third wheel, the friend who is secretly in love with her.
The turning point for all of this is the episode detour. I love this episode because it forces them out of their comfort zones.
It's basically a bottle episode structure, but out in an open environment.
Yes. Frasier and Charlotte are driving.
Yeah.
And Frasier's driving like a grandmother, so they miss their train not once, but twice. Then the car breaks down in the middle of nowhere.
And they end up staying with this bizarre, eccentric, rural family. It's almost a horror movie setup, but played entirely for laughs.
It is. But narratively, it strips away all the distractions. There are no fancy dinners. There's no opera. There is no Frank.
No.
Just Frasier and Charlotte in a strange house.
Forced proximity.
Forced proximity. It forces them to confront the reality of their connection. They have to sleep in the same bed, well or near it. The pretense completely drops. They realize that despite the scam, despite the boyfriend, there's something undeniable happening there.
But before we get to the actual resolution of that relationship, we have to talk about one of the most spectacular failures Frasier has this entire season.
Oh, I know where you're going.
We have to talk about Nanny G.
Oh, this is essential viewing. This is the writers looking at Frasier's past and deciding to blow it up one last time.
For those who don't know the deep lore, Nanny G is Nanette Guzman, Frasier's first wife, the one he married way back in his hippie phase. And now she's a incredibly famous children's entertainer.
And she's played here by Laurie Metcalf, who is just a absolute force of nature.
The episode Caught in the Act is probably the physical comedy peak of the season for Kelsey Grammer. Frasier goes backstage to see her. She's unhappily married. She still clearly has a thing for him. And one thing leads to another.
And by one thing, you mean Frasier stripping down to his boxers and hopping into a giant prop bed with a woman dressed as an overgrown baby.
Exactly that. But the mechanism of the bed. He thinks they are having this intensely private, illicit moment.
And then the curtain rises. The bed literally lifts up.
Oh, man.
And suddenly a half-naked Frasier Crane is being elevated onto a stage in front of hundreds of screaming toddlers and their parents.
It is the ultimate nightmare scenario. It is the peak of humiliation for a man who prides himself on his dignity.
But you have to ask, why do the writers do this? Why humiliate him this badly right before the end of the series?
To break him down.
I think it's a cleansing ritual. It's one last chaotic, libido-driven mistake.
Yeah.
It shows us that Frasier is still capable of being led completely astray by his ego and his hormones.
Yeah, he hasn't fully evolved yet.
Right. He has to get this out of his system, this need for validation from his past, before he can actually move forward with someone real like Charlotte.
It's hitting absolute rock bottom so you can start the climb back up. Now, while Frasier is being displayed to toddlers, Niles is dealing with a very different kind of life change. This is the season where Niles and Daphne finally become parents.
The pregnancy arc is handled with a lot of grace, but also a lot of typical Crane anxiety. It starts with the episode, No Sex, Please. We're skittish. Niles discovers his sperm has low motility.
Which is devastating for a moment. You really see the genuine fear that they might not get their happy ending.
But the show quickly pivots. It turns out Daphne is already pregnant. So the tension completely shifts from can we to Oh my God, we actually are.
However, we cannot talk about Niles in season 11 without discussing the most insane subplot in the history of the show.
Oh boy.
The Maris murder arc.
We have to pause here because this is arguably the writers taking the unseen character trope and stretching it until it fundamentally snaps.
It really feels like a dare in the writer's room. Like, how far can we push this invisible woman before she breaks the reality of the show entirely?
Precisely. For 11 years, Maris was a punchline. She was defined by her extreme frailty. She couldn't lift a grape. She disappeared behind breadsticks. She was essentially a ghost. But in season 11, the writers invert this completely. They turn this fragile ghost into a violent killer.
It starts with her new boyfriend, right? The Argentine polo player.
Esteban. He's very volatile. Maris calls Niles for help. Niles, being Niles, rushes to her aid and keeps it a secret from Daphne, which is his fatal flaw, lying to protect the people he cares about.
But then the news breaks. Maris has killed Esteban.
She straight up murdered the polo player. And the weapon.
Oh, the weapon.
An antique crossbow that belonged to Niles.
You cannot make this stuff up. An antique crossbow. It's so absurdly specific. It's not just a gun. It's a pretentious, very Crane-esque weapon. It implicates Niles in the total absurdity of the crime.
It does. And narratively, this was a very strategic demolition. The writers knew that as long as Maris was in Seattle or even in the country, Niles would never be truly free. A civil divorce wasn't enough. They needed to make her a literal fugitive.
The scene that defines this whole arc for me is in Murder Most Maris. Niles is being questioned. The press is hounding him at his office. The stress is just mounting and mounting. And he finally breaks.
The Cafe Nervosa breakdown.
Yes. He walks into the cafe completely naked and just sits down to read the newspaper like nothing is happening.
It's the ultimate shedding of dignity, but it's also the ultimate shedding of Maris. He has nothing left to hide. He has been stripped bare by her madness one last time.
Wow, that's a great way to look at it.
And then the resolution. Maris flees the country. She goes to a private island to avoid prosecution. She is permanently exiled.
She becomes a literal outlaw.
It is the only way to close the book on her. By sending her to a private island where she can never return. The writers physically removed her gravitational pull from Niles' life. She is gone. And that allows the finale to be purely about Niles, Daphne, and their new baby.
And speaking of that baby, there is a really lovely detail in the finale. They name him David.
That is a direct tribute to David Angel. He was one of the brilliant creators of Frasier and a huge part of the show's soul. He and his wife were tragically killed on one of the planes on September 11th, 2001.
Such a huge loss.
Naming the baby David was a way for the cast and crew to say, we haven't forgotten you. You're part of this ending.
That really grounds the absurdity of the crossbows and the naked breakdowns. It reminds you that there are real people behind these characters.
Absolutely it does.
Okay, let's pivot to segment 2. We've covered the boys. Now let's look at the patriarch, Martin Crane, and the woman who keeps the station running, Roz Doyle. Martin's arc in season 11 is arguably the most heartwarming of the entire cast.
It's a full-on renaissance. For years, Martin was the grumpy retired cop sitting in his duct-taped chair. He dated here and there, Sherry Bonnie, but nothing really stuck. In season 11, he finds the real deal.
Enter Ronee Lawrence, played by Wendy Malick.
Who is absolutely perfect casting. She brings this brassy, fast-talking energy. She's a lounge singer. She's got grit.
And the connection is classic sitcom gold. She used to be Frasier and Niles' babysitter.
Which immediately introduces this layer of awkwardness and Oedipal weirdness that the show just loves to play with. Frasier actually tries to compete for her at first. In the episode The Babysitter, he genuinely thinks she's interested in him.
Because of course he does. Frasier thinks everyone is interested in him.
But she chooses Martin. And I think it's important to analyze why Ronee works when someone like Sherry didn't. Sherry was loud and brash, but she often clashed with the boys in a way that felt genuinely grating.
It was almost too much friction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ronee has an edge, but she's also sophisticated in her own way. She can hold her own against Frasier's snobbery. She doesn't just annoy them, she puts them firmly in their place.
She's got that incredibly sharp wit. But their road to the altar isn't exactly smooth. In fact, it's paved with a literal near-death experience. We really have to discuss the episode, Boo.
Boo is a masterclass in escalating a prank until it stops being funny and starts being totally life-altering.
The setup is that Martin keeps scaring Frasier, jumping out from behind doors, yelling, "Boo!" Frasier is sick of it, so he decides to get revenge.
And because he's Frasier, he doesn't just hide behind a curtain. He's currently treating a patient with coulrophobia, which is the fear of clowns. So he happens to have a terrifying professional-grade clown costume.
Of course he does. So he puts on the suit, he holds a meat cleaver, he waits in the dark in the living room. Martin walks in, Frasier jumps out.
And Martin clutches his chest and goes down.
He gives his father a heart attack.
It's the darkest comedy imaginable. Frasier is standing there in a terrifying clown suit holding a cleaver, thinking he's literally killed his dad.
It's so morbid, but so funny.
But narratively, this is the catalyst. That brush with death wakes Martin up. He's lying in the hospital bed and he realizes he doesn't have forever. He proposes to Ronee right there.
So in a weird, twisted way, Frasier dressing as a murderous clown is the reason his father got married?
Indirectly, yes. It forced the issue. It moved Martin from a state of stagnation to a state of growth. He chose to grab happiness while he still could.
And the wedding itself, well, it's typical Crane chaos.
It takes place in the finale, and everything goes wrong. The venue is way too hot. Eddie eats the ring.
Eddie eating the ring is a great callback to the pilot, really. The dog is always the ultimate agent of chaos.
And because of the heat and the dog swallowing the rings, they end up getting married in a veterinary clinic.
Which is honestly perfect for Martin.
It really is. A fancy cathedral wouldn't fit him at all. Getting married in a vet clinic with his dog, his sons, and a woman who truly loves him. That's Martin Crane's ultimate happy ending. It's completely unpretentious.
Now what about Roz? She's been the voice in Frasier's ear for 11 straight years.
Roz's arc is subtle, but very significant. She starts the season trying to leave. She takes a job at another station, KPXY, but she quits because it's just a bad fit. She goes back to KACL.
It feels like a step back initially, like she's stuck in a rut.
It does, but it actually sets up her final promotion. By the end of the season, Kenny, the current station manager, decides he wants to go back to being a DJ. The position of station manager suddenly opens up.
And Roz gets it.
She becomes the boss. And this is the perfect conclusion for her character. Roz was always the most competent person in that entire building. She managed Frasier's massive ego. She managed the Daily Show. She managed the constant chaos. She was born to run that station.
Absolutely.
She doesn't end the show with a man necessarily. She ends it with power. She ends it with total professional actualization.
Which is a very modern and refreshing ending, especially for 2004. She didn't need to be saved by a romantic relationship.
Exactly. Her career was her triumph.
Okay, I want to take a moment for segment 3. We've looked at the big overarching story arcs, but season 11 contains some individual episodes that are just absolute diamonds. We mentioned the clown incident, but we have to go deep on High Holiday.
High Holidays. If you look at any top 10 Frasier episodes list anywhere on the internet, this one is usually in the top 3. It might genuinely be the funniest episode of the later seasons.
This is the infamous pot brownie episode.
The premise is brilliantly simple. Niles, realizing he was a goody two-shoes his entire life, decides he finally wants to rebel. He buys a pot brownie from Roz to experience getting high for the first time.
But the mix-up is the genius part. Martin unknowingly eats the actual pot brownie. Niles eats a regular, completely normal brownie.
We really need to dissect David Hyde Pierce's performance here because it is a absolute masterclass in comedic acting. He isn't playing a man who is high. He's playing a man who thinks he is high based entirely on what he's read in medical textbooks.
It's the placebo effect on steroids.
There's a scene where he's pairing the brownie with a Chilean sea bass. He's aggressively intellectualizing the intoxication. He's shouting, "I am stepping into a dimension of pure flavor." He thinks he's tripping out of his mind, but he's really just being peak Niles.
And then you cut to Martin. John Mahoney's performance is the exact polar opposite. He does almost nothing.
He's just staring blankly at the fridge handle.
Yeah.
He's completely zonked out.
Yep.
There's that moment where he has to replace Eddie in a commercial for the Seattle Tourist Board. He's sitting in an armchair high as a kite, just waving vaguely at the camera.
It's the contrast that kills me every time. Niles is incredibly manic, trying to perform drug use, while Martin is actually experiencing the chemical reality and just having a great time.
It deconstructs their personas so perfectly. Niles creates a mental construct of rebellion, while Martin just lives in the moment.
Another massive highlight is the doctor is out. We teased the guest stars earlier, but Patrick Stewart as Alistair Burke is on another level completely.
Alistair Burke is a high-profile, incredibly wealthy gay opera director.
Yeah.
And through a series of classic sitcom misunderstandings, the entire city of Seattle and Alistair himself thinks Frasier is gay.
And Frasier, instead of correcting him, which would be the normal thing to do, just leans into it.
This is a really profound look at Frasier's vanity. Alistair is wealthy, he's cultured, he knows absolutely everyone. He takes Frasier to the best parties, the best boxes at the opera. They become this elite power couple.
Frasier loves the status way more than he cares about the reality of his sexual orientation.
There's a brilliant line where he says, "I am one half of a power couple." He is so seduced by the adoration and the access that he genuinely considers briefly just living a total lie.
And Patrick Stewart plays it with such incredible charm. You get why Frasier is tempted. Alistair is magnetic.
It's also a really great subversion of the gay panic trope that was so common in sitcoms back then. Frasier isn't panic about being thought of as gay. He's absolutely thrilled because it makes him popular. It attacks his social climbing, not his masculinity.
One more structural oddity from this season to mention is Crocktails.
This is a weird one. It's the penultimate episode right before the finale.
It uses a broken crock pot as a framing device to flash back to previous years.
But they aren't clip show clips. They filmed entirely new scenes set in 2003, 1990, and 1996, and so on.
Which means we get the cast in some truly terrible wigs.
The wigs are highly questionable, yes. But the intent behind the episode is really touching. It's a retrospective. It allows us to see the evolution of their relationships one last time. We see Niles miserable with Maris. We see the early friction between Frasier and Martin.
Right, it shows the growth.
It contextualizes how far they've come right before we have to say goodbye to them. It's a love letter to the history of the show.
Okay, this brings us to the big one. Segment 4, the finale. Goodnight, Seattle.
This is a massive television event. May 13th, 2004. 25.25 million people watched this broadcast.
The setup involves a major career crossroads for Frasier. He is offered a huge job in San Francisco.
A TV host. It's the next level for him. It's what he always wanted, national fame. His agent, Bebe Glazer, played by Harriet Sansom Harris, who is another incredible recurring character. She sets the whole thing up.
But the family, they don't get the message straight away.
No, they don't. And this is the final farce of the series. There is a massive communication breakdown involving a doctor's appointment and Frasier giving away his stuff for the move. The family becomes completely convinced that Frasier is dying.
That is so dark for a sitcom finale.
It is remarkably dark, but it serves a very specific purpose. It forces the family to treat him with this incredible tenderness. They are crying. They are hugging him. They are forgiving him for absolutely everything. And Frasier just thinks they are sad he's moving to San Francisco.
It heightens the emotions so much, but once that is finally cleared up, we get to the actual farewells. The scene in the vet clinic, the scene in the empty apartment. It's all about dismantling the set, literally and metaphorically.
And then the final broadcast. Frasier is in the studio at KACL one last time. His family is watching through the glass, and he recites a poem.
Tennyson's Ulysses.
To strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield.
It is the perfect choice for him. Frasier is fundamentally an explorer. He's an explorer of the human condition of romance of his own incredibly complicated psyche.
And then his sign-off. He says, for 11 years, you have heard me say I'm listening. Well, you were listening too, and for that, I'm eternally grateful. Good night, Seattle.
It breaks the fourth wall just enough. It's Kelsey Grammer thanking the actual audience at home.
But then the twist happens. And this is what we really need to chew on.
Right. Throughout the entire finale, we are told he is going to San Francisco. He takes the job. He says goodbye. We see him on the plane. He sits down next to a woman named Anne, played by Jennifer Beals. He starts chatting.
And then the pilot makes an announcement.
Welcome to Chicago.
He is not in San Francisco.
He didn't take the job, or at least he's not going there yet.
He's chasing Charlotte. Charlotte had moved back to Chicago earlier in the season to manage her family's cheese business. Frasier has thrown away the TV job, or at least put it on a massive hold to fly across the country for a woman he has dated for maybe a month.
So he chose the girl. He chose the heart over the head.
He did. After 11 years of prioritizing his career, his status, his massive intellect, he made an impulsive, purely romantic choice.
And his final line isn't a grand speech. He just looks at Anne and says, "Wish me luck."
That's it. Cut to black.
Now I have to ask you, looking at this as a whole, is this a happy ending? Or is this Frasier making a huge, terrible mistake?
That is the eternal debate among fans. If you look at it romantically, it's absolutely beautiful. He finally took a real risk. But if you look at it cynically, he's chasing a woman who scammed him out of 10 grand, who lives in a completely different city, and he's giving up a massive career opportunity to do it. It could be a total disaster. He could land in Chicago and she could say, "What are you doing here?"
But maybe that's the entire point.
I think it is the point. The point isn't that he gets the girl. The point is that he tried. He broke his own toxic pattern of overanalyzing everything to death. He took a genuine leap of faith. Saying, "Wish me luck," implies that he knows he might fail, but he's doing it anyway.
Yeah.
That right there is real growth.
That's a fantastic way to put it. Before we wrap up this deep dive, we have to acknowledge the sheer volume of star power in segment 5, the guest star gallery.
It was absolutely the place to be in Hollywood. The source material lists a special guest category that is just completely stacked. We already mentioned Patrick Stewart, Laura Linney, Aaron Eckhart, Laurie Metcalf.
But there's so many others. Jennifer Tilly appeared as Kim in Ms. Right now. Rosie Perez played Lisbeth.
And the guest callers. We can't forget the callers. Even in the final season, they kept that iconic tradition alive.
Benjamin Bratt called in Stanley Tucci.
Helen Mirren.
Yes, Helen Mirren called in as Babette. And even the younger generation got involved. Hilary Duff called in as Brittany.
It really shows the massive cultural reach of the show at that time. From Helen Mirren to Hilary Duff, everyone wanted to be a part of the history of Frasier before it ended.
So bringing it all home for the outro, what is the true legacy of Season 11?
Season 11 was about moving on. If you look at the arcs, everyone finally grew up. Martin found a partner and faced his own mortality. Niles became a father and completely shed his neuroses about Maris. Roz became the boss.
And Frasier finally left the building.
He really did. He left the safety of his meticulously designed apartment and his isolated radio booth. He entered the real world with all its messiness and risk.
The ratings reflect just how much people cared about these characters. The source says the finale drew 25.25 million viewers.
That is a number you just don't see anymore in television. It was a true monocultural moment. It was arguably the last time we all sat down together to say goodbye to a group of friends like that.
So here's my final thought for you listening to Mull Over today. Frasier ends the show on a plane to Chicago. He chose love over his career. But let's play the tape forward and think about his past.
Okay.
When his marriage to Lilith fell apart, he moved from Boston to Seattle for a fresh start. Now his Seattle life is wrapping up and he's moving to Chicago. Is he actually choosing love, or is Frasier Crane just addicted to the geographic reset?
Oh, wow.
Does he require a completely new city every decade just to feel like he's making progress?
That is a brilliant question.
Right.
I like to think he stayed in Chicago and found a way to be happy without needing a radio audience. But knowing Frasier Crane, he probably at least complained about the towels in his Chicago hotel room.
Almost certainly. Thank you for taking this deep dive into Frasier Season 11 with us.
Good night, Seattle.
We'll see you next time.